cool. You've made it this far, and then you'll have engine module for 7 weeks, I believe, 14 classes. And then you'll be done with me for a little bit. You'll get Frank for AC after that. So I'll be taking you guys into, I'm kind of looking behind you, Annie. I can't see the schedule, but I think I'll be taking you guys into March. Let's see, February, March. Yeah, I'll be taking you guys into March. Into March for engines, and then you'll have AC with Frank. Oh, it's blank?
Let's just, that's a transmission only.
Okay. All right, cool. So today we're going to go over troubleshooting. I've got our training engine downstairs. We'll do some hands-on down there. It's actually got a code in it. I don't know how it got there, but it's there, so we'll take a look at it. And everything else seems to work fine on it. That's the one, see, were you at last year's rodeo? Were you one of the rodeo team?
No.
I thought you were. Oh, it's your brothers. Yeah, I had to work like hell to get that engine up because I lost some drivers inside the ECM for the engine, and it was running horribly bad and throwing like all these codes. I'm like, I can't run this thing for the rodeo. It's gonna have like half a dozen codes. Frank and I were down there working on it. We troubleshot it back to the ECM had a internal driver failure. So I had an ECM laying around in the Connex box. And my thinking was, well, Red, Cummins, we're good. So this goes kind of to back up what I said about you. Just because it's a Cummins ECM doesn't mean it's going to work on your application. So we bolted it up, plugged it in, and I logged on to it. And I'm like, oh, I like this. It was a 375 horsepower, ours are 280. I was like, oh, this is nice. And cleared all the codes that were in it. And I fired it up, and nothing worked. I couldn't get the transmission to go into gear. I had all these codes. I'm like, oh, I'm worse off than when I started, right? So it just so happens Cummins engineers were over here working on a problem with the bus, and I waved one of them over, and it took a while. He had to reflash it, load in our transit program, and then make some minor modifications for the training engine, and we finally got it up and running. But it, it's like, oh, my thought was, oh, it's red. It came off a Cummins engine somewhere. It should work. So, and it did. It got the motor started, and it ran okay. But once they got they flashed it, put the right template in it, with the base program and everything else. Now the thing starts every time. Because before I could start it like I did this morning at 5:30, and there's no guarantee it would start at 7:30. That's how finicky the thing was. I really hated that. I was like, you want me to start it? So, seems to be working better. So we'll see what happens later on. But it's one of those things where if you go on eBay, you can buy Allison ECM. You can buy CNG tanks. And I looked at it and I was going, oh, it's expired, but you can get it requalified. No, you can't. Once it's expired on the labels, it's done. And people are like, oh, I'll buy that, and then, I don't have to spend $5 grand for a new one. I'll buy this one for $300. Yeah, do that. Try and get it filled. Have fun with that. So, there's plenty of snakesters out there selling bogus stuff. They'll tell you whatever you want to hear to get you to buy their product, whether it's the truth or not. So, alrighty. So we're going to go over some troubleshooting. Then we're going to go downstairs. I'll demonstrate, or you'll demonstrate the breakout box and pulling codes and basic troubleshooting down there. So I got the big red down there ready to go. She's all warmed up. It was cold this morning though. I was telling Frank, I went to come to work this morning. So I'm starting my Jeep in the garage. Now everything's fuel injected these days, right? So engine should not backfire. And man, I got this huge backfire and scared the crap out of me. I was like, what the heck? It was my neighbor starting his Harley next door. and it backfired the same time I was trying to start my Jeep. And I was like, ba-boom! I was like, what the? So I got out and I opened up the hood and I'm looking for like burn marks, right? From it backfired through the throttle. And then I heard his bike start. And he rides by me, he looks in the garage, and he starts laughing because he knows what happened. I thought it was my Jeep. I was like, oh, I hope the rest of my day doesn't go like this. It was funny though. Okay, now, we're going to talk about troubleshooting. And troubleshooting is not necessarily component specific. Now, what do I mean by that? If you have a set procedure for troubleshooting problems, it will work on whether you're troubleshooting an engine, a transmission, brakes, whatever. It's a systematic, logical approach to a problem. Systematic. Okay? So if I've got an engine knock, I'm not going to be over there replacing the windshield washer pump. That doesn't make sense. It's not logical. Okay? But if you have a process that you use, you being individuals, there is no right way and wrong way to troubleshoot a problem. I guess there is. The wrong way is you don't find the answer. The right way is you get to the answer in a relatively efficient manner. Okay? Now, an efficient manner isn't necessarily based on time. It could be he didn't throw $6,000 worth of parts at this thing and find out it was a 20-cent connector or a broken splice in the middle of a 40-foot harness, right? Efficient could be it took you 2 days to get there because you kept getting interrupted with this task and that task and so on and so forth. Okay? But troubleshooting components has a lot of commonalities. For instance, if I'm troubleshooting brakes, transmissions, or engines, the first thing I have to understand is, well, what problem am I looking at? The simple question, and you see guys do it, hey, what's the problem? Well, that's 50% of the battle. Most of the times you'll ID symptoms. The engine misfires. Okay? Why? You gotta ask simple, basic questions. Why is it doing that? When did it start? Under what circumstances did it do it? Is it still doing it? Did it stop? Under what circumstances did it stop? Has it repeated? A lot of times we miss our best clue, and that's Yesenia, the driver. When did it start? Well, I was fully loaded going up a hill. Did it stop? Yeah. When I got down the hill, everything's fine until I came back around to go up the hill again. Then the problem began. Did it do it when the bus was empty? Don't know. It's always full. How fast were you going? 3rd gear. Okay. I could probably go out and duplicate that problem. Now, maybe I might have trouble getting the bus heavy, because if I go in the shop and ask for guys to ride the bus for now, there ain't going to be nobody left. They'll, I'll go! Bum rush the doors, and the supervisor's like, where is everybody? Oh, they went on a road test with Sanchez over there. Boys, your goose cooked when you get back. Took them out for donuts and coffee. We rode up and down the hill
We
for a
go
while.
far. We go for lunch.
Yeah.
That's a road test.
Don't put Lorraine on there instead of donuts and coffee. You're buying lunch now. It's gonna look awfully funny. Jack in the box, stopping every seat, going, okay, he wants something.
Road trip is a road trip.
Dang, yeah, there you go. Sounds like you've been on a few of them, huh? Maintenance and operations working together. Who's footing the bill? Oh, crickets. All right. So troubleshooting is a systematic search for location of a malfunction in the engine or transmission that affect the performance. Troubleshooting is a lot like looking at a funnel. Right? If you look at a funnel, it's this big at the beginning. By the time it gets to the bottom, it's considerably narrowed down. Okay. So, really hard to troubleshoot something if you really don't know how it works. Sanchez, the hospital called, they want you to troubleshoot their MRI machine. You're like, sure, it's plugged in. Good, about as far as I can go. So, not going to have a lot of luck at that. But if I say, hey, I've got a transmission that's acted on, but I don't have a lot of information about it. I got on the BO card, transmission acts funny. I don't even know how to begin to describe what that could possibly be. So you're at a disadvantage there. Now Lorena writes it up, transmission shifts bad, 2nd to 3rd going uphill fully loaded. Ah, good with that. So I, take the bus to the hill, and she can even give me a location. You're going up Chapman Hill.
Oh, that's a good one.
With no passengers, bus still can't get above 10 miles an hour. engine sounds like it's turning faster than it should. Oh, this is good. Sounds like I got a transmission issue. Now, mechanics' biggest problem when troubleshooting is they jump to conclusions. And then they get that tunnel vision. It's the transmission, I just know it is. And they forget every other clue because it locked in on transmissions. And that's hard not to do. You've all done it.
Should we be riding up buses that don't go up the hills faster? Like, what's normal, what's not?
You know what? I can't tell you that.
I just gave up. You know,
Well, because,
I turned the AC off.
yeah,
Going
you
up.
guys would know better than I, because I don't drive these buses in revenue service with passengers. So if you've driven 4 buses, let's say, and they all go up the hill at about 20 miles an hour, then that's probably the best you're going to get. Now, if you drive the 5th bus and it's chugging up at 10, yeah, you probably got a problem. But it's going to be based on your experience. I couldn't tell you because I don't drive them in revenue service. Okay?
It gets bad.
Oh, I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does.
The
But if it's like-
the Arctic's going uphill on Brea with 57. Oh, you go all the way to 10 second,
Yeah.
and you go. Okay,
Street
keep going,
sweeper
keep
guy.
moving, keep moving.
Yeah, but if what you ought to do then is talk to other drivers that are driving other Arctics. How fast does yours go up the hill? 10 miles an hour. How fast does yours? Oh, 12. How fast is yours? 9. Okay, that's probably the best they're going to get. But if you're going up the hill and it's going like 3 in first gear, then there's probably a problem. But if it's going up at the same rate other drivers are going up,
It's about the same with everybody.
then that's the best you got.
That's the best.
Because I couldn't tell you, because I don't drive it. I don't know how it goes up the hill full, I don't know how it goes up the hill empty, I don't know how it goes up the hill with the AC on, I don't know how it goes up the hill with the AC on, because I don't drive it.
I drive a 5529 every day. That's my regular bus. And going on Jamboree, going to Newport Transportation, I had to turn the AC off, everything off to go up.
Yeah.
If I don't do it, the bus won't move.
You can write it up with specifics. Don't say, goes uphill slow. What hill? What's slow? But if you say, going up the Jamboree Hill with full load of passengers,
And not so many passengers, about 10.
okay. But if you put going up Jamboree Hill from Jamboree Boulevard to the street, and it's slow, and you got to turn the AC off, and it gets sent into the mechanics. Well, they'll say, oh, let me go road test it up the hill, and again, my mechanics have better ideas of what it should and shouldn't do, and they'll take it up there and go, no, that's about right, and they'll send back, no problem found. That's just the nature of the beast. Or, yeah, you know what, this is really bad. But at least, because if you write bus slow uphill, what hill, what's slow? But you write bus only goes 5 miles an hour up the Jamboree Hill from this street to this street, is this a problem? Gets to my mechanic and he'll say, oh no, between that street and Jamboree and she's going this stuff, no, that's it, that's about all you're gonna get. Or they'll look at it and say, yeah, no, you should be doing a little better. He'll get the bus, hey boss, I'm going to Jamboree, he'll go up the hill, yep, that's a problem, bring it back, do whatever it is they gotta do. The more information you guys, because you're the front line. Other than preventative maintenance inspections, you guys are the front line. That's the only other way we're gonna get problems. Okay? And the best thing you can do because the mechanic's only got about half an hour to diagnose a problem. If he can't find it in half an hour, it's gotta go back out online. I don't have time to have Joaquin spend 2 hours trying to find a problem that may not be there. Right? So you get about a half an hour. Unless you find something, then you're given a little more time to figure it out. But if you get, Lorena writes up, slow bus, and you're like, because I watch these guys and they look at it like, what's this all about? Or, can't do anything with that. You'll road test it a regular route.
They put it down. They say nothing is wrong with the bus. Road test, everything is okay, and they put it down.
Yeah, because but if you give me something specific, Jamboree Hill from a red light, hot day, AC on, 4 miles an hour up the hill. He's gonna get it, go, oh, okay, well, I got something to work with here. We'll go, hey boss, I need to go do the Jamboree Hill because I need to find out if this is the problem. They may let you go, I'm sure they would. Because the boss wants to get it fixed as bad as he does. So he'll go up the hill and he'll go, yeah, 4 miles an hour, that's a problem. Or whatever, or maybe it's not, if it's an articulated bus. I don't know, but these guys do. They drive more than I do. They would know more than I would. And, you know, they'll write back, no, that's about it. Unless they want to put a little propane down the pipe, that'll get you up there quick. Probably burn up the motor, but man, it'll go quick. Propane or nitrous. And when they tell you if you want nitrous during the dental visit, that's a ripoff. I took it for my root canal, they do nothing for me. They'll breathe through your nose like trying to get some in there. I was like, I didn't feel like I was high. I want my money back. So when you're troubleshooting, you're going to use a lot of equipment. Voltmeter for making electrical checks. You're going to be using electrical schematics, hydraulic schematics, power flow. You have to be able to read through the schematics and understand how it affects the operation of the transmission. Okay? If I've got 2 components that don't work, my first thought is, well, what do they got in common? A lot of times, just thinking along those lines, well, these 2 components share the same ground. Well, there's a good clue. They share the same ground. So we get the schematics out. Well, there's a splice in there. I wonder. Maybe that's my problem. Now you're going to back it up with testing, because oftentimes you guys don't have the time to pull a 40-foot harness out of the bus, the transmission OEM harness, lay it on the table, and it would be about as long as this table, and find the splice. Because you got to take off all the shrink wrap, then you got to cut all the electrical tape, then you got to find the splice, repair the splice, wrap the electrical tape back around it, put the split loom back on it, and then snake it back into the bus and connect it. And hope it works. Most of the guys will connect it outside the bus and make sure everything's fine, because they're not going to go through all that rigmarole to put in a BO harness, bad order, defective harness. Okay. Now, this is why you guys are here, mechanical aptitude. Got to have some basic mechanical knowledge. If I don't know how an engine works and I got to troubleshoot a misfire, I'm sunk. If I don't know how to use basic hand tools to remove components to get to other components, I've got a problem. I don't know to look for latching mechanisms on connectors, and here I am with pliers yanking on wires to try to get a connector apart. I just built in 26 other problems more than likely. You guys have had to deal with that. Some schmuck in here going, hey, you won't come apart. And he's got channel locks on both connectors, yanking like a hyena at a meal. You're like, oh, jeez, I hope I don't get that bus tomorrow. And you're like, oh, I got that bus. Good thing is you know where to start. There's the harness he was, yanking on. Those guys you just want to walk over with a freaking breaker bar. Give them a what for? They call it assault with a deadly weapon. Every place has 1 or 2 of them. And then you ask them, how long have you been working on these things? Oh, I've been here 30 years. You're like, really? And you haven't evolved past caveman? Demon Christmas. I mean, that's called job security. Cleaning up after the knuckleheads. Now, you guys are going to have to use the viewer or manuals or schematics or ladder logic. And what you have to be able to do is take the ladder logic from the computer laptop and understand how it works in the bus, on the bus. The transmission, you have to be able to take how the ECM controls the transmission and how the inputs off the bus control the ECM. Your problem might not be a transmission, it might be one of the systems that supports the transmission. And what do I mean by that? So you go out in the yard, you got a driver that says, I can't get it in gear, won't go into drive. So you go out there and fire it up, put your foot on the brake, turn off the high idle switch, and sure enough, it won't go into gear. Now, back in the day with mechanical transmissions, there's only two things that could be. The cable's broke or the transmission's broke. Like, oh, cool, two choices. Now, if my switch on my dump valve for the front doors is defective and the ladder logic doesn't see that input, it's not going to allow Allison to go into drive. If the park sensor for my ramp is defective, ladder logic isn't going to see that input, transmission's not going into drive. So you don't have a transmission issue. You've got a bus OEM electrical problem. Has nothing to do with the transmission's just doing what it's told. Hey, don't go into gear, the ramp's deployed. Makes sense to me. Or the rear door limit switch is defective and it thinks the doors are open, it won't go into drive. Okay? And you think, well, this is not even transmission related. Exactly. Exactly. So you got to think about, well, if the component is good, if the transmission's good, what other systems are associated with it? And sometimes that's a thin connection. We talked about how ABS can affect retarder lockup and braking. Okay. So if you're playing in the transmission ballpark and the problem's the dump valve switch not putting in the input into the ladder logic, you're not going to get the problem solved. Correct? Who's had problems like that? What was it last time you had? What was it?
Last time, they just left the key on for the wheelchair ramp.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Now, a rookie mechanic with minimal experience may not go there. How'd you find it other than you just saw the key, right? Or did you look in the logic?
No, I just made sure that I just covered my bases.
Yeah, so that was your part of your troubleshooting was to put the bus in the situation it needed to be in and then see if it went into drive. So that's part of your troubleshooting step, and that's an absolutely valid, you know, like you get the ramp won't deploy. So you set the bus up in the proper situation to deploy the ramp, and then you check the ramp. Now when we get a batch of new drivers coming out of school, your yard calls go up, because the drivers, number one, they're nervous as all get out. They're on their first day, and they're trying to kneel the bus, and maybe they've got the doors open, and then they're like, well, my bus won't kneel. And then you go out there, your troubleshooting is, okay, first, what's the problem? Well, the bus won't kneel. Okay, second, is the bus set up right to kneel? No. Okay, what's wrong? Got the doors open. Open the doors. Does the bus kneel? Yes, problem solved. Did you troubleshoot? Absolutely. It just didn't take long. Now, you set the bus up to kneel, doors open, parking brakes on, bus is in neutral, and it doesn't kneel. Okay, now your troubleshooting is going to get a little more in depth. So you send the guy off to get another bus, and now you're troubleshooting. You're on about second phase of it. Yes, I verified the problem. The bus doesn't kneel.
I
Okay.
went on a road call once, the bus won't go into gear. So I responded to the road call, I come out there, she goes, look, it won't go into gear, it won't go into gear. You just load a wheelchair lift passenger? Yeah. You gotta turn the key back off.
Yep.
The wheelchair lift key.
That's exactly what he's saying on a yard call. Or a road, was it a yard call or a road call?
Not the yard call.
Yard call. You know, and sometimes it's the driver's in a hurry because they're running late, they just forget something. Sometimes it's a rookie driver coming out of, you know, operations school, and he's on the first or second day, and he's nervous as all get out, and he can't get the bus to kneel, and he just like, you know. And then sometimes there's actual defect.
One time, when we first got the Navies, and I was at Anaheim base, and I relieved a driver at State College Orange Store, and I got in there, he goes, and it's the first time I'm driving that bus. And, you know, the old bus is completely different. So I get in there, and I'm like, I can't move the bus. What's going on here? Wheelchair man, what's going on here? And I was in there, so I call radio. Radio doesn't know. You know, they don't, because, you know, after a while they learn, they tell you certain things to check for.
Sure.
So I'm just there, and I'm just like, this is insane. You know, what could this be? You know, and so I'm there, and then the mechanic comes out right there, you know, right off of Orange Thorpe, and he's like, oh, fast idles on, because now you used to be able to put it into gear with the older buses. It didn't matter.
Yeah, the fast idle will keep it because it's not seeing low enough idle, it doesn't want to bang
Yeah.
and cause damage.
In the 3000s, there was no phone.
Well, yeah, the 3000s were,
That's it was a cable.
yeah, it was a cable.
I
Yeah.
like those, man, I missed that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because what you experience is called a shift inhibit. Now, one of them is engine RPM. If Allison sees our RPM above a certain point, we used to call it in our day a neutral drop. Because you want to get the whole shot, you bring the RPMs up, you throw it in gear. Well, they're not going to let you do that. So with the high idle switch on, and you know, it could be a mirror
I feel like
attitude.
an idiot, man.
Well, no, I mean,
But
I've gone
that
out.
was the first time I ever driven that bus, you know.
Well,
I didn't know.
I've gone out in the yard to move a bus, and same thing, I got an Abbey, got it fired up, and I couldn't get it to back up. I'm like, what's the deal? Same story. And I'm kind of going through a mental checklist, I'm going to foot on the brakes, doors closed, blah, blah, it's not dealt, wheelchairs parked. And then I'm listening to the engine, I'm like, oh, crap. Turn off the high idle, went reverse. But I mean, it took about 15 minutes to figure it out. I was getting frustrated because, you know, I needed to do something. I didn't have a lot of time to do it. And first thing I was like, oh, I'm going to have a great day. I can't even move the damn bus.
Isn't that when it first changed though, to the high idle, the navies, I think?
Well,
All the other
No, I
buses-
think the low floor new flyers that we had right before the Navies did the same
Oh,
thing.
they did?
Yeah. Well, anything with a WTEC in, it's not going to let you put it in gear at anything above an idle. Okay. So the point is, number one, if you don't know how it works, and that's a great question. If you don't know that the high idle is going to keep it from going into gear, as a mechanic, you're going to be troubleshooting something that's not broken. You know, you're going to, okay, we'll push it into the yard, we'll push it into the shop, and you're going to be fiddling around with it, and at some point, you'll come to the conclusion that, oh, the high idle, there's nothing wrong with it, it just wasn't in the right situation to go into gear. And, you know, the first time you do that, when we first got the V731Ds in Long Beach, that was the setup. If the bus was on high idle, that V drive wouldn't go into gear. They didn't.
You had the electronic valve body.
V731Ds, yeah. We had a combination of the V731, which is a V drive, and I'll explain that in a bit, mechanical, that go into gear anytime. And then when the electronics came out, if the high idle was on, or the doors weren't closed, I mean, there wasn't air to the door, and the door wasn't closed, and it had to be at right height, and the wheelchair ramp had to be parked, it wasn't going to go into gear. So when these buses hit the yard, we had no paperwork on them. Here's your bus. Great. Mike, go move the bus. I'm like, great. Put it, start it up, hit drive. What the? I was like, holy crap. Won't go into gear. We've got no manual. Long Beach was infamous for bring us the gear, forget about the paperwork, get it to us when you can. Okay, so here comes the 20 new RTSs with the new Allison electronic transmission. Great. The guy that delivers them leaves, so we got 20 buses sitting online. We want to bring them in the shop, and nobody can move them. I'm like, what the, So I'm in there turning switches, and eventually hit upon the high idle switch, and it goes into gear. I was like, oh, great. So I move one, and I go to another one.
And those cables were nice.
Till they broke.
I guess maybe from a driver's point of view, but from maintenance, they would stretch, and you'd have to adjust them to get them into the right detent in the transmission to get it in gear. And then if it broke, that's 40 feet of cable that's been in there since for 20 years that you have to try and go above. You're going to get crap.
Did you ever have to replace one?
Oh, yeah, I had to replace. And the throttle cable on a flexible too. The throttle and the shifter were all the same.
I got lucky. I never had to change one of those cables. Because it either came in at the start of graveyard. Oh, you passed it on. All right, pass it on. I'd get an. I'm not lying. I'd get an inkling.
long enough.
I'd get an inkling of what it was.
The shifting's all electronic, right?
Yeah.
Everything's electronic now.
I'd get a feeling that it was going to lead to a defective cable, and I'd go on to another part of the bus to fix, and then I'd put it pending and leave it for someone else. And yeah, it's kind of an a-hole move, but I didn't want to change it.
happens all the time.
I didn't want to change that
I don't
cable.
want to do that. Look at this list of things I can do. I think I want to do this, this, and this.
I'll change the head sign light, I'll change the interior light, I'll change the step well light, I'll change the green enable light, I'll change this, I'll change that, and if I could stretch it out long enough, I won't have to start on that cable. And that's what I did.
It was an ugly, dirty job.
Yeah, nobody wanted to do it. We had one guy, he wasn't the brightest bulb in the chandelier, he bragged about how good at it he was.
Guess what?
Guess what, sports fans, you another shipped cable guy. You're the cable guy, we don't mean it in a good way.
Was
All right.
it really tucked away in there, huh?
Well, it's bolted, it's actually clamped to the floor, and it's put in before they put in all the suspension and all
Mike,
the fuel tank and everything.
They lay the cable on a table and they build the bus around it,
Basically.
basically. Because the assumption is, this is gonna last the life of the bus, so access isn't important. Well, that's great, till you're the guy that's gotta fix the one that's stretched so far you can't adjust it anymore.
And dozens of P-clamps.
And none of them were marked, you didn't know where they were. Depends on the guy that put it in the bus that day.
Oh, man. So when you put it in, you gotta do all that. Yeah.
We had gas tanks dropped out when they were diesels, we had all kinds of things, man. Body panels full
the
of.
same amount of the-
Huh? No. You get one guy that's just got a fun day at RTS back in New Mexico, there could be 100 of them on there. Because he got a new drill and he want to try it out, right? And then you get one guy that's like, one up front, one in the back. And they didn't tell you in the manual, oh, there's 16 P-clamps to remove because they didn't know. They're like, yeah, there's P-clamps on how many? Well, George did it last time, there was 26, and when Fred does it, there's 4. Well, there you go. Have fun with that.
Figure it out.
Yeah, up to you. And then the question is, why are you changing it? It's broke.
I have a question. What are some of the basic safety rules you follow when you're troubleshooting and repairing?
Electrical and welding, which we don't do, disconnect the ground. Airlines, assume they're charged. Don't ever assume they're not charged. And if someone says they're drained, check it. Not that the guy's trying to hose you, but maybe he drained the wrong tank. Okay? If somebody's helping you troubleshoot, you've got down here, you're working on a connector and you've got somebody in the driver's seat to put it in drive when you need to put it in drive to make, to see if a component energizes or goes to ground. Make sure you understand each other. Common set of, language. If this means shift and this means don't, make sure he understands that this is what you want him to do, and you don't want some guy randomly putting it in gear when you're leaning on the drive line or whatever. That's the other thing. If there's a potential hazard, if he inadvertently puts it in gear when you don't want it to be in gear, be prepared for that. Don't be, oh crap, he put it in drive and I didn't want him to. Well, because he heard someone yell drive and it wasn't you. So watch what you're around. There's been, and you've probably seen it, guy's working in the engine bay and he slips and he grabs the discharge line on the air compressor because he's fallen into the engine bay. What's that leave? Wee bit of a burn. Okay? Most of the repairs, what's that?
My brother almost killed me for that.
He almost killed you?
Yeah, I used to work on construction and he's helping me to back up. And his signal was hitting the truck. So for him to tell me to stop, it was the same signal, he was in the truck. So I keep backing up and I almost went on the cliff. And until he started screaming and I stopped, one of the wheels is hanging.
Oh.
And I said, well, why you gonna tell me to stop? I'm like, well, I was good. And I'm like, it's the same thing. Like, what do you want me to know the difference? You were hitting the truck, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
After that, I learned, like, even if someone's gonna walk up to back up, okay, make sure I see you. Because if I don't see you, like, nope,
Yeah.
I have to see you. Stay where I can see you and I can do a signal that I can actually understand.
Yeah, you need to understand whatever signals you're going to be using or whatever words you're going to be using. Make sure that you understand that, so you don't have the bus being put into gear inadvertently and you're in a vulnerable spot. When you're making repairs, I know some guys like to do it running so they can see if that fixes the problem right away. Not generally a good idea. Number one, if you're disconnecting sensors to check them while it's running, you're logging codes. So you start disconnecting, sensors 20, 30 times. Now you got all these codes, and you're like, oh, Jesus, did I mask the one I'm working on? So power it down, shut it off. If you're installing the breakout box, and we'll do that downstairs, don't pull that thing off while it's powered up. You pull that 8-pin connector off, that computer's gonna go nuts. You're gonna have codes logged to the end of the year, man. Okay? You shouldn't be connecting or disconnecting while it's powered up. It's a lot of code. You got 80 wires, right?
We just started the year.
That's right. You got a lot of
Close to the
code.
end the year, that's a lot of codes.
Yeah.
Long time.
That's like when you don't check your email for a while and you got 4,000 messages. Have fun with that. Right? Electronically throttled or electronically controlled tranny, disconnect the batteries before removing any connectors or doing any welding. If you're going to be pulling the ECM out of it, for whatever reason, or you're going to be disconnecting a lot of connectors because maybe you got to check continuity over wire, probably not a bad idea to power it down. Just throw the battery switches off. Welding, I don't know if we do any welding. We here in the shop got to get a hot permit. And if you're going to be welding, you're going to have to disconnect all the modules of Vanscope. If it's electric doors, the vapor door control module, the transmission module, the ECM, the ABS, Thermo King. You got a lot of stuff to be disconnecting. So if it's welding, just, oh look, it's 145 pending, and hand it off and let the body shop guys do it. Used to weld in the shop though, back in the day. RTS, the only thing you had to do was disconnect the batteries. You can weld all day then after that.
Well, usually the body shop guy is the only welder on the floor at a time.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of people thought they could weld,
Yeah.
usually the body shop guy was the guy that did it.
Yeah, that's a good clarification. There's a lot of guys that can weld, but there's very few that can weld correctly. When I was with Long Beach, we were blessed that we had certified welders on basically all the shifts. Not because they just happen to weld as a hobby and they were good welders, so if we needed welding, they could, make moderate repairs.
Like MIG welding probably?
Well, I don't know, I'm not a welder, I wouldn't know MIG, TIG from arc and spark, I don't know. I know enough to stay away from welding equipment, because I don't know nothing about it. What's that, Harry, Dirty Harry? Sometimes you gotta know your limitations.
No, that wasn't Dirty Harry, that was Cool Hand Luke.
Is that what that was?
Yeah.
What my hand here, the failure to communicate. Okay, you got it. And sometimes the best thing a mechanic can do is know when to stop. We had Non Lee, he was a veteran mechanic, he retired. He was defueling a bus. He was up on the roof trying to figure out when to put in the override tools, and he got a little confused and he stopped. He said, you know what, I'm not going any further. And in that particular task, if you pull out the mechanical stop and you try and put in the mechanical override tool and there's a problem with the tank, you could pull that plug out and have 3,600 pounds of fuel coming at you, and you got a problem. So sometimes the best thing you can do as a mechanic is, number one, override your pride and just stop and ask questions. I mean, there's nothing wrong with asking questions, because I tell you, if you run into a mechanic that says he knows everything, get away from that guy. Or, I've never made a mistake. Get away from that guy. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Okay? I don't know everything and I never will. And as a mechanic, you don't know everything. And at the rate technology is changing, especially these days, it's hard to play keep on. Now, pre-checks. This is awesome, because you guys, Sanchez there already came up with it. He said, well, the bus wouldn't go into gear. So pre-checks, basic things. Now, you'd be surprised how often a basic function check or basic pre-check schedule or set of steps will find a problem. So what are some of the pre-checks on a transmission? The first one out of your toolbox would be, well, does it have oil in it? Now here's the scenario. Some mechanics say, oh, that's too damn easy. Of course it's got oil in it. How did you come to that conclusion? You walk up to a bus that won't go into gear, right? And right away, you walk up to the front, you get in the bus, and you fire it up. The fact that you didn't see that you traipsed through transmission oil when you walked around the back of the bus, you missed your best clue. So you fire up the bus, and you're like, it's not going in there. You wasted it. Okay?
We just talked about turning the bus off when you work on it, so like checking fluids on the road with tranny, you still check it at like idle.
First thing you do, if you get a bus complaint that won't go into gear, won't move, makes a funny noise when it starts, you go back, you pop the deck lid, you pull the dipstick out, and you look for the presence of oil on the stick. Okay, so what else does this do for me? So Joaquin gets a bus, the driver says, I put it in reverse and it won't move. It is Joaquin, right? I'm not calling you by the wrong name. I just call you Sanchez, I'm horrible with first names. So you all right with that? All right, good. Two things. You pull the dipstick out and you're like, oh, there's no oil on the dipstick. It's happened. Okay, I would be a happy guy. So you sit and says, I put it in reverse and it doesn't move. And I pull the dipstick out, there's no oil. I'm like, I'm doing the happy dance. You know why? Because my problem's probably not the transmission. Where'd the oil go? Now, I'm thinking the transmission oil fairy didn't show up that night and drain it. Probably. So now I'm probably looking at a leak as opposed to something in here. Number two, I pull the dipstick out to check the oil and I look at it and it looks like tar and it's gritty like the beach. This is good. From a standpoint of troubleshooting, this is good. It's not good for that, but... Okay, so now I know I've got oil, it looks like tar, and it's gritty. So I may not even move the bus at that point. I might go back in, punch the bus up, and find out there's a lot of miles on that transmission. Right? Now I'm going to go to the boss, and I might even have the dipstick with me. I says, hey, this is bad, and it's got 274,000 miles on it. What do you want to do? Oh, that sounds like an R&R candidate to me. Well, we'll just check that off, land all up to Santa Ana, here's your next bus. Now, damn, I forgot to take my nap. Okay? Now that's the nap, that's a good thing because now the bus, the supervisor in his books, he's cleared that bus. He solved the problem and the repair belongs down at rebuild. It's off his books, it's out of his shop. And it's on the hold list, but it goes to Santa Ana, it's their problem. Now, was it a difficult problem to solve? Not that time, right? The other time is you went and fired up a bus, you didn't check the oil, the fact there was none in it, okay? So the pre-checks, fluid level. Pop the deck lid. Look at it. Anything look funny? You've all looked in the back of buses, you've probably looked in hundreds, if not thousands of buses at this point in your life. You know what something looks like and what it shouldn't look like. You open up the deck lid, you're like, that wiring harness shouldn't be going that way. Somebody rerouted it next to the hot side of the turbo. I wonder if that's affecting current flow through it. If you attended Phil's class, you'd be like, yeah, oh, big time. You got all this resistance in there because it's running past the heat source. My favorite is the connector is melted. How'd that happen back in the day? Gee, I wonder if that's a problem. Now, as mechanics, we're geared to look for major problems, and we tend to overlook the easy stuff. Oh, that melted connector's not an issue. I'll look at that later. And you just walk right past your problem. Okay? A lot of mechanics don't like to disconnect connectors. Number one, they don't know how. They're like, it won't come apart. Well, yeah, because you're not sliding a little lock. Now, the problem with Cummins is they got different locks. They got half a dozen locks on the different connectors depending on what you're messing around with. You're trying to pull the connector off the ECM, it's got a little slide lock. You're trying to pull the connector off the turbo sensor, it's got a little push down. One of them's got the kind of squeeze. I mean, I don't know, maybe somebody got, commission on how many different kind of locking devices they could put on the connectors, but rest assured, most connectors are locked somehow so they don't vibrate loose. It's very rare, if at all, you're going to find when you just grab it comes apart. If you do, that might be your problem. My favorite is the guy didn't feel like fixing it the right way, so he put zip tie around it. That'll fix it. Sure it will. Most zip ties have a piece of metal going through them. That's why they're strong. And when you wrap it between two wires, the wires rub, the plastic rubs, and they short out through the zip tie, and there's your problem. Well, I broke the tab off. I don't want to fix it, so I'll just zip tie it. Thanks. You just kick the problem down the road. Okay? Other issues that affect the transmission are support systems. The driveline supports the transmission. It wouldn't go far if you didn't have a drive shaft on it, would it? Look fun. Look, it says I'm going 80 miles an hour. Oh, there's no drive line. But can it cause a problem that feels like a transmission? Sure. More new drives. Things vibrate, or what is it, sometimes it goes into gear and it clunks real bad. Oh, the transmission's bad, it's clunking, let's change it. Well, why would you do that? Because last time I did that, that fixed the problem. Oh, that makes, sure, yeah, I'll sign up for a $15,000 program because that's great. See, part of being a mechanic is you gotta be a salesman. Come up to me and tell me you need a transmission, and transmission coming out of parts costs 15 grand. Why? Oh, because I didn't troubleshoot it, and if I put a new transmission in, it's probably gonna work like better than the old one, and I don't have to screw with it. Sure, yeah, I'm good. Go ahead. Yeah. We had a transmission wouldn't go into lockup. So they put a new one in it. Still wouldn't go into lockup. So they took that transmission out and they put another one in. Still wouldn't go into lockup. So then they started thinking, maybe it's not the transmission. Non-Lee found it. So broken wire in the OEM harness happened to be the F solenoid coming from the ECM. He soldered it back together, plugged it back in, and 3 hours later, it's working.
I thought this was the ABS story.
No, that's a different story. Don't tell that to Kirby, because he was the supervisor that signed off on the transmissions. He caught a little hell for that. But the problem wasn't the transmission, it was the OEM harness on the flyer.
Broken wire, so it was never energizing the solenoid.
That's why I wouldn't go into lockup. The first tranny they gave him, it was a high mileage transmission. It had 200 plus, 250,000 plus on it. So like, yeah, you know what, it needed to be changed out anyway. The second one, no. And the third one, definitely not. So, it was a wire. 3 hours later, the wire was fixed, busted down the road. So you have to sell your solution. You have to say, hey, the transmission's bad because when I use the breakout box, I realized that internally pin A is shorted to pin B, and that's why the solenoid don't work. That's why it won't go into second.